It is that time of week again, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, and every Wednesday on this channel, we discuss Bulls hot takes, where I feature your takes that you've sent me over the week and my reaction to them. Also, guys, in case you missed it, I did my first live stream Q&A session yesterday. I'll leave it linked in the description if you want to check it out. And a huge shout out for all of those who tuned in live for your questions. Also, I didn't even realize it until after the video uploaded, but I thought I had my mic turned on, which is the mic that you hear me on now. But it turns out it wasn't on and my voice was just coming through the computer audio. Anyway, next time I'll make sure I have the mic on so that my voice is a little bit clearer. I'll try and continue doing those periodically, maybe once a quarter or so. Also, don't forget, on Tuesday, on the 22nd, I will have a live reaction video to the NBA draft lottery. Can't believe that it's already next week. And hopefully the Bulls can get lucky, so tune in if you're interested in that as well. Also, a huge shout out to Viget for sponsoring this video, but more on that in a little bit. With all that being said, let's get into the hot takes. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Let's get us kicked off with our first hot take, which comes to us from Alcaz Eason. Really sorry if I butchered that, but the take is Coby White will never be the Bulls' main point guard. So I definitely disagree with this take. Now, I'm not sure, if the Bulls fans on the other end of the spectrum, I'm not one of those who believe that Coby is a future superstar or a Hall of Famer. Like, no, that's not happening. But because Coby does have the talent and the work ethic and the drive to get better and take on whatever role the team gives him, I do think he can be the Bulls' main point guard for the future. It's not going to happen now. Like, I don't think he's going to be our main point guard next season or even the following season potentially. But I do think the Bulls, if they develop him properly with the right mentorship from a veteran point guard, he could be that point guard of the future that we need. Now, I say could be because at the end of the day, I do still believe Coby is a better shooting guard who is more effective playing off the ball. But in order for Coby to really remain on the Bulls team long term, with the focus on building around Lavine, he's not going to be able to play the two unless he comes off the bench. And Coby has shown the ability to get better at the point. We saw that towards the end of the season. So I'm not saying it will happen that Coby will be the main point guard for the future for the Bulls, because it's dependent on so many factors, from who the Bulls bring in this offseason or any trades that will be made. But to say Coby will never be the Bulls' main point guard, no, I don't think that's accurate. I will say this most recent injury that he suffered is concerning for his long-term health and development, not just looking at this upcoming season. I mean, whenever you have a player suffer from a shoulder injury, the first thing that comes to your mind is how will this impact their jump shot and shooting form, right? I think guys like Markelle Fultz, shortly before he entered the league, and now his jump shot was completely broken in his rookie season because of a shoulder injury he sustained. So I am a little worried about how this injury will impact Coby's future, but hopefully he'll recover just fine and will be ready to go at the start of the season after the initial 4-month timeline. Next, we've got Jay Vento. Bulls offer trades for Montrezl Harrell and Zubac to pair with Tice and Vucevic. So I'm not as big of a fan as some are about Harrell. I mean, I think he's a solid player, but I do think ever since winning the Sixth Man of the Year award last year, he has become a bit overrated. It's part of the problem I have with the Sixth Man of the Year award in general, is because then everyone assumes that this player who deserves a big payday because they won that award, when in reality it's not always the case. Also, I'm pretty sure Harrell is a free agent, so if the Bulls want him, they may not need to trade for him anyway. I think he would be a nice piece for the Bulls, don't get me wrong. I guess it just depends on what it would be to give up for him in order to get him in return. Let's say, they do look to trade for Harrell and Zubac. I mean, the most I would be okay for those two are probably Satoransky and maybe Markkanen via a sign-in trade. I get where you're going with it. I just don't think it adds a ton of value to the Bulls to where it would be worth giving up that much for them. Next, we've got Ken18, the resident Bulls hater on this channel. Pat will be a bust like Wendell Carter Jr. Well, first of all, I don't consider Wendell to be a bust. It's way too early to give him that kind of label, given he was drafted in 2018. On top of that, it's not like he was the number 1 overall selection. He was selected 7th in the draft. And you had guys before him who haven't really panned out thus far. Guys like Mo Bamba, Marvin Bagley, although I actually like Bagley. Even that aside, though, Wendell wasn't an awful player with the Bulls. He's a bit injury prone, but when he played, he was decent enough that he was impactful. Not all the time. He was a decent defender, a rim protector, and and had great nights on offense as well. This isn't me saying that Wendell was a great player with the Bulls, but rather he is by no means a bust. And then Patrick Williams, come on now. I know some people felt that he had a pretty underwhelming rookie season, but the kid clearly has potential with his defensive prowess, his calm and cool demeanor, and efficiency on offense. He just needs to be more aggressive on offense and putting up more attempts and driving to the basket more. But for a 19-year-old who had a shortened training camp, was drafted in the middle of the pandemic, and was tasked with some big responsibility in his rookie season, starting every game, and more often than not guarding the opposing team's best player. So no, I do not think Patrick Williams will be a bust by any means. I do think, some are hyping him up a bit more than they should. Like, I think it's premature to say that he's going to be a superstar. That's a bit of a stretch, but I think he's going to be a very, very good player in this league and not a bust. Before I get into the next take, a quick shout out to our sponsor of today's video, Vigit. Vigit is a sports social networking app and betting app. However, it's a sports betting app where you can use free money in the form of tokens, but you can use these tokens to win actual prizes like Amazon gift cards, flat screen TVs, PlayStation 5s. You bet like you would any other sports betting app or sports book, using the same odds you would see in Vegas, but again, entirely for free. I personally have now cashed in on 2 Amazon gift cards at no cost to me. So if you like sports betting and you want to win free stuff, feel free to download the app using my promo code linked in the description. It is free to download and free to play, no catches or anything like that. And guys, as a disclaimer, I do receive a very small affiliate commission when you use my code. So if you want to support me and the channel, but it doesn't cost you anything, since I don't believe in Patreon or membership fees or taking money from subscribers, then this is one way to do it, since I know some of you have asked about ways to support the channel. Anyway, link is in the description for the app and the code. And with that out of the way, let's get back into the hot takes. So next we've got Ife Olajide. I'm so bad at pronouncing names, but the take is, if the Bulls get a top 4 pick, they should trade it with Satoransky and Aminu for Malcolm Brogdon. I guess I sort of struggled to see the fit with Brogdon. I actually talked a little bit about this in my Q&A session yesterday. I actually really like Brogdon, and that I think he's a great combo guard, but I have a hard time envisioning how he'll fit with Lavine. And not even just Lavine, but also Kobe White. The other thing about this trade proposal is, where would the pick fall in the top 4? Because if it's number 1, that's too much to give up for someone like Malcolm Brogdon. I personally think that if we get the number 1 pick, you need to keep that and draft Cade Cunningham. But if we're looking to trade the number 1 pick, should we actually get very lucky and get that, you could get significantly more for it than someone like Brogdon. If it was the number 4 pick, okay, I could see it being worth it, because really Sato and Aminu, the Pacers, are taking on those contracts actually as a favor to the Bulls so they can get the money off the book. So essentially you're trading the number 4 pick for Brogdon, which I think is worth it. 1 through 3, I think that's too much, and it wouldn't make sense given the Bulls could likely get more in return for the picks that are that high and very valuable. Next, we've got Monkey321. Steph Curry could potentially come to the Bulls, or Zach will win MVP. I know it's a stretch, but I would really appreciate it if you would put this in the video. Love your channel. Well, thank you for that and the support. And because you asked so nicely, I figured I would include it. But really, because this take is also super hot. And I understand, if I understand correctly, it's really 2 takes in one. Either Steph comes to the Bulls or Zach wins the MVP. I mean, what I'll say is that Zach winning the MVP next season is more likely than Curry coming to the Bulls. And Zach's chances of winning the MVP are very low unless he absolutely dominates next season and the Bulls finish as a top 3 team in the East and Lavine is the guy that leads them there. So that in and of itself is a pretty hot take. But then Curry to the Bulls, I mean, I guess the first question is, I assume you mean when his contract expires and he becomes a free agent, which will be next summer. Otherwise, the Bulls would have to trade for him, and the Bulls don't have the trade assets to actually make a trade like that work. But as a free agent in 2022, I mean, first, I don't think Curry is leaving the Warriors. I do think he's going to remain a Warrior for life. In the small chance that he does leave, I mean, he's not going to the Bulls, and for a couple reasons. He's likely going to want to go to a contender or Charlotte, which is his hometown. Now, if the Bulls do somehow become a contender in just a year's time, then okay, maybe. But even then, Curry will be 34, going to be 35 going into the 22-23 season. He's not going to fit the Bulls timeline, and you would have to think he's going to finally start declining by then, although he really showed no signs of slowing down at all this year. So yeah, I don't see this happening, but hey, I guess anything is possible in the NBA these days. Next, we've got the game, and the reason I included this one is because there were actually some questions in the Q&A from last night and follow-up discussion in the chat, and I didn't see it until after the stream was over, but someone had asked whether the Bulls should retire Rodman's jersey. And so this hot take expands on it even further to Luol Deng, Rodman, Noah, Kirk Hinrich, and Horace Grant. Which I guess I'm a little surprised you left out D Rose off the list, but perhaps it's because he hasn't retired quite yet, because I do think that Chicago will retire Rose's jersey when all is said and done, especially if he ends his career with the Bulls, just because of what he meant to the city, the fact that he's a hometown hero and won an MVP, the youngest to win the MVP in NBA history. So I do suspect that his number will be retired. As for the others, well, let me start with Rodman, since there were a number of people asking about that last night. I think what you have to realize is that the Bulls franchise are very strict in terms of whose number they actually retire. Like, the franchise in their entire history have only retired 4 jerseys. Now, what generally constitutes a player's jersey being retired is whether or not they played their best years with the Bulls, how long they played for the franchise, and then of course the accolades that they achieved during their tenure there. So I think, what isn't in Rodman's favor, which by the way, if they were going to retire his number, they would have done so already. But Rodman only played 3 seasons with the Bulls. And although they were great seasons, he won 3 championships and was their 3rd best player on those championship teams. He was past his prime. I think, again, it would have happened by now if we'd actually seen Rodman's jersey retired. But the fact that he only played 3 seasons with the team is going to go against him, because it's not a very long tenure with the Bulls. For Luol Deng, a little bit surprised they haven't retired the number 9, actually, just because Deng played so many seasons with the Bulls. He was drafted by Chicago. He was a 2-time All-Star and All-Defensive Team player. He was a key contributor in those early 2010 years when the Bulls finished with the best record in the league. I guess they still could, because it's not like Luol Deng has retired for that long, but I have a hard time seeing them doing it, again, just based on how strict they are when it comes to jersey retirements. Noah, I definitely think that they should. I mean, another guy who played the majority of his career in Chicago and his best years in Chicago, also a 2-time All-Star and Defensive Player of the Year. And like Rose, he meant so much to the city and the organization. I hope that they will. I'm not 100% sure that it in fact will happen, but he did just retire this past season. So I think if you give it some time, we'll probably see the number 13 hanging in the rafters shortly. Kirk Hinrich, I mean, what's funny is that Kirk was never really that great of a player. Like, he was never an all-star, never won any major awards, but he was such a key player in all those years leading the Bulls back to the playoffs since the Jordan days. And get this, aside from MJ and Pippen, he is 3rd in games played for the Bulls, 3rd in steals, assists, and number 1 in 3-pointers made for the franchise. He's one of the more well-known and notable players for the Bulls. So despite not being a star for the team, he was one of the more consistent players for the franchise, and of course played the majority of his career in Chicago. However, it's another one where I feel, if they did in fact retire his jersey, it would have happened already. And then finally, Horace Grant, I mean, a great player. I have him in my top 10 Bulls players of all time, a 3-time champion, but the last time he played for the Bulls was in 1995 and has since retired in 2004. Ultimately, if there was going to be a jersey retirement for Horace Grant, it would have happened by now. Yes, and let's finish off with this one. I received this in the Discord under the Hot Take channel with no comment, just the picture. And yeah, that's not happening. There's no way that the Dallas Mavericks are going to let Luka go. Like, could you imagine if the Bulls were looking to trade Rose after his MVP in 2011, when you have a franchise player already that young that you can build around for years to come? You don't trade that player. If the team isn't working out, which I know there's a lot of speculation that Mavericks Mavericks and the players aren't happy, you move on from other guys and you build around your franchise player, which is Luka Doncic. Obviously, I would be ecstatic if the Mavericks were that dumb to let him go and somehow he ended up on the Bulls, but until we're living in an alternate universe, it's not happening. He does look good in a Bulls uniform though, I'll give you that. So I'll end it there for this week, guys. Don't forget to leave your hot takes for next week in the comments below, and download the Viget app using my promo code in the link below in the description for some free tokens, and well on your way to winning some free prizes. As always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.